the heart of Manhattan, in a nondescript apartment building, there existed a unit that seemed perfectly ordinary to the naked eye. But within its confines lurked a sinister secret, one that would defy logic and chill the bones of anyone who dared to uncover it. It all began innocently enough. Sarah, a young professional, moved into the apartment seeking refuge from the hustle and bustle of the city. The rent was reasonable, the location convenient, and the space cozy. Little did she know, she was stepping into a nightmare waiting to unfold. At first, everything seemed normal. Sarah settled into her new home, arranging her belongings and making it her own. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, strange occurrences began to plague her. It started with subtle noises in the dead of night, faint whispers echoing through the walls, and shadows that seemed to dance in the corner of her vision. Brushing off these disturbances as figments of an overactive imagination, Sarah carried on with her life. But as the weeks passed, the disturbances grew more pronounced. Objects would inexplicably move from their place, doors would slam shut without a breeze, and Sarah found herself waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with no memory of her dreams. Determined to unravel the mystery behind these phenomena, Sarah embarked on a quest for answers. She delved into the history of the building, seeking out former tenants and scouring old records for any clues. What she uncovered sent shivers down her spine. Decades ago, the building stood on the site of an ancient burial ground, long forgotten by the passage of time. Rumors whispered of a curse that befell anyone who dared disturb the resting place of the dead. Could it be that Sarah's apartment was built atop this cursed ground? Fueled by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Sarah began to investigate every nook and cranny of her apartment, searching for any sign of the supernatural. It was during one of these late-night expeditions that she stumbled upon a small, seemingly innocuous crack in the wall of her bedroom. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a minor imperfection in the plaster. But as Sarah approached, she felt a cold chill run down her spine, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. With trembling hands, she reached out to touch the crack, and to her horror, it widened, revealing a dark abyss beyond. For a moment, Sarah stood frozen in terror, unsure of what to do next. But the pull of the unknown was too strong to resist. With a deep breath, she summoned all her courage and stepped through the crack, plunging into the darkness beyond. What awaited her on the other side was beyond comprehension, a twisted realm of nightmares and madness, where the laws of reality ceased to exist. Time seemed to stretch and warp, and strange, otherworldly creatures lurked in the shadows, watching her every move. Driven by instinct, Sarah pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind this bizarre phenomenon. But the deeper she ventured into the abyss, the more she realized the true horror of her situation. The crack in her bedroom wall was not just a gateway to another world, it was a prison, trapping her in a never-ending cycle of fear and despair. As days turned into weeks, Sarah's grip on reality began to slip. Haunted by visions of her past and tormented by the whispers of unseen forces, she struggled to maintain her sanity, but in the end, it was all for naught. In the darkness of the abyss, Sarah's mind unraveled, consumed by the same darkness that had claimed her soul. And so the mystery of the strange crack in the wall remained unsolved, a grim reminder of the horrors that lurked within the shadows. As for Sarah, she became just another tragic footnote in the annals of the paranormal, lost to the abyss forevermore. Emma and David had just moved into their new apartment in the heart of San Francisco. It was an old building, charmingly aged with creaky wooden floors and high ceilings. They were a young couple, excited about starting a new chapter in their lives. The apartment was perfect, or so they thought. The first few weeks were blissful. They enjoyed their new neighborhood with its cozy cafes and vibrant street life. The apartment itself felt like home almost instantly. They painted the walls, arranged their furniture, and even hosted a housewarming party for their friends. One evening, Emma noticed something strange. She was cleaning the living room when she spotted a small, circular hole in the wall behind the couch. It was no larger than a quarter. She called David over to take a look. "What do you think it is?" Emma asked, peering into the darkness of the hole. David shrugged. "Maybe an old nail hole or something. This place is pretty old, remember?" "Yeah, but it's just odd. I've never seen a hole like this before." They decided to cover it with a piece of duct tape and forgot about it. Life went on, and the hole was soon out of their minds. But strange things started happening around the apartment. It began with small noises. At night, when the city's hum died down, they could hear faint scratching sounds. Emma would wake David up, but by the time he was fully awake, the noise would stop. They attributed it to the building settling or perhaps a rodent problem. One night, the scratching grew louder. Emma, unable to sleep, got out of bed and tiptoed to the living room. The noise was coming from behind the couch, where the hole was. She leaned in closer, heart pounding, and heard what sounded like faint whispers. "David, wake up," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. David stumbled out of the bedroom, groggy and irritated. "What is it now?" "Listen," Emma whispered, pointing at the hole. They both stood there, listening intently. The whispers were gone, replaced by an eerie silence. David sighed and turned on the lights. He pulled the couch away from the wall and tore off the duct tape covering the hole. "See?" "Nothing," he said, exasperated. Emma shook her head. "I know what I heard." David, in an attempt to reassure her, decided to explore the hole further. He grabbed a flashlight and shone it inside. The beam of light disappeared into the darkness. There was no end in sight. "This is weird," he admitted. "It looks like it goes further than the wall." They decided to call the building superintendent, Mr. Hargrove, the next day. He was an elderly man, knowledgeable about the building's history. When they showed him the hole, he frowned. "That's strange. I don't recall this hole being here," he said, scratching his head. "This building is old, though. Maybe it's just a structural issue." Mr. Hargrove promised to send someone to inspect it, but days turned into weeks, and no one came. Meanwhile, the occurrences became more unsettling. Emma started having nightmares. She dreamt of being trapped in a dark, narrow space, with whispers echoing all around her. She would wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. One day, while David was at work, Emma decided to investigate the hole herself. She took a long, thin stick and gently pushed it into the hole. To her surprise, it went in deeper than she expected. As she pulled it out, she felt a sudden gust of cold air brush against her hand. Shivers ran down her spine. Emma decided to call her friend Sarah, who was a history buff and loved mysteries. Sarah came over that evening, intrigued by Emma's call. "This is fascinating," Sarah said, examining the hole. "Do you mind if I take a closer look?" Emma nodded, relieved to have someone share her curiosity. Sarah pulled out a small endoscope camera she had brought with her and fed it into the hole. The camera's feed displayed on her phone screen. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then, they saw something that made their blood run cold. The camera revealed a hidden room behind their wall. It was small and cramped, filled with old furniture and strange, archaic symbols painted on the walls. In the center of the room was a wooden chair, and sitting on it was a life-size doll, dressed in an old-fashioned dress. Its eyes were eerily lifelike, staring directly at the camera. "What the hell is this?" Emma whispered, horrified. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her voice shaking. "But it looks like someone used this room for some kind of ritual." They pulled the camera out, and Sarah immediately called the police. When the authorities arrived, they were just as baffled. They broke through the wall to access the hidden room. The doll was taken as evidence, and the room was sealed off. The police investigation revealed that the hidden room was part of the building's original structure, dating back to the late 1800s. It was likely used for secret meetings or rituals by a mysterious cult that once operated in the area. However, no concrete information could be found about the cult or its practices. Emma and David were advised to stay with friends until the investigation was complete. They stayed with Sarah, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Her nightmares intensified, and she began seeing shadows moving in the corners of her vision. One night, Sarah woke up to find Emma standing at the foot of her bed, eyes wide open but unseeing. "Emma, are you okay?" Sarah asked, gently shaking her. Emma blinked, coming out of her trance. I heard them again. The whispers. They're calling me." Sarah decided it was time to get professional help. She contacted a paranormal investigator named Dr. Ian Carter. He was known for his expertise in dealing with haunted locations and had a reputation for getting to the bottom of unexplainable phenomena. "Doctor, Carter arrived the next day, equipped with various tools and devices. He listened to Emma and David's story with great interest. "Let's start with a thorough investigation of your apartment," he said. They returned to the apartment, and Dr. Carter set up his equipment. He placed audio recorders and cameras around the living room, focusing on the whole. As night fell, they sat in the kitchen, watching the live feed from the cameras. Hours passed, and just as they were about to call it a night, the cameras picked up movement. The doll, which had been taken by the police, was back in the hidden room. Its head slowly turned towards the camera, and the audio recorders captured faint whispers. "Do you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Carter nodded. "It's definitely paranormal activity. Whatever is in that room, it's trying to communicate." He decided to conduct a seance to try and contact the spirit. They gathered in the living room, holding hands around a table. Dr. Carter began to chant softly, calling out to the spirits. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and the lights flickered. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with an eerie, unintelligible murmur. Emma's eyes rolled back, and she started speaking in a voice that wasn't her own. "You have disturbed our sanctuary," the voice said. "Leave now, or suffer the consequences." Dr. Carter continued his chant, trying to communicate with the spirit. "Who are you? What do you want?" There was a moment of silence before the voice replied, "We are the keepers. This place is sacred. You must leave." The seance ended abruptly as Emma collapsed, unconscious. Dr. Carter explained that the spirits were likely tied to the cult that once used the hidden room. They were angry at being disturbed and wanted the apartment vacated. Emma and David decided they couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. They packed their belongings and moved out the next day. The building's management, aware of the paranormal activity, agreed to let them break their lease. Emma's nightmares gradually faded, and the couple found a new place to live. They tried to put the whole experience behind them, but the memories lingered. Months later, Emma received a package in the mail. It was an old book, bound in leather, with no return address. Inside, she found detailed accounts of the cult that once operated in their old building, along with a note. "The keepers never forget." Emma's heart raced as she realized the spirits were still watching. She and David decided to move far away, hoping to escape the reach of the keepers. They eventually settled in a small town on the other side of the country. Life returned to normal, but every so often, Emma would hear faint whispers at night, a chilling reminder that the past was never truly behind them. In the heart of the Pacific Northwest, nestled between dense forests and misty mountains, lay a small, forgotten town called Cedar Hollow. To the outside world, it was just another blip on the map, an insignificant speck in the vast landscape of America. But to those who lived there, Cedar Hollow held secrets buried deep beneath its moss-covered soil. It all began with a peculiar discovery by a group of adventurous teenagers. Sarah, Jake, and Emily were known in Cedar Hollow for their insatiable curiosity and penchant for exploring the unknown. One cloudy afternoon, they stumbled upon an overgrown trail leading deep into the forest, whispering promises of adventure. As they ventured further into the woods, the air grew thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The trail led them to a clearing unlike any they had seen before. At its center sat a gaping hole, its edges jagged and uneven, as if ripped from the earth by some unseen force. Intrigued, the trio approached cautiously, their hearts pounding in their chests. Peering into the darkness below, they could feel a cold, foreboding presence emanating from the depths. Sarah shivered, a chill running down her spine, but curiosity overpowered fear. Without a second thought, Jake produced a flashlight from his backpack and aimed its beam into the abyss. The light disappeared into the darkness, swallowed whole by the yawning chasm below. Emily swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke. "What do you think it is?" Jake shrugged, his bravado masking his unease. Only one way to find out. With a shared glance, the trio made a silent agreement and began their descent into the unknown. Step by cautious step, they lowered themselves into the depths, the walls of the hole looming ever closer, as if eager to swallow them whole. Minutes turned to hours as they descended further and further into the darkness, the air growing colder with each passing moment. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that gnawed at her insides, a primal instinct warning her of the danger that lurked below. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, their feet touched solid ground. They stood in a vast cavern, its walls stretching into darkness, their flashlight beams barely making a dent in the blackness. But it was what lay at the center of the cavern that sent a shiver down their spines. A pulsating mass of swirling energy hovered before them, its colors shifting and changing like oil on water. It seemed to hum with a malevolent intelligence, a presence that transcended the boundaries of comprehension. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she stared, her mind struggling to make sense of what lay before her. Jake took a cautious step forward, his hand outstretched as if drawn to the strange phenomenon.
What?
What is this? Before anyone could respond, a voice echoed through the cavern, sending chills down their spines. It spoke in a language they couldn't understand, ancient and guttural, yet filled with a sense of urgency that cut through the darkness like a knife. They stumbled backward in shock, their minds reeling from the encounter. Without a word, they turned and fled, their footsteps echoing off the walls as they raced back towards the surface. But the memory of the strange cavern haunted them, a dark shadow that lingered in the depths of their minds. In the days that followed, whispers spread through Cedar Hollow like wildfire. Rumors of a strange hole in the forest, of voices that spoke in tongues long forgotten. Some dismissed it as the ramblings of overactive imaginations, while others whispered of ancient curses and otherworldly beings. But one thing was certain: Cedar Hollow would never be the same again. The strange hole in the forest became a symbol of fear and uncertainty, a reminder of the mysteries that lurked just beyond the edge of our understanding. And though the teenagers never spoke of their encounter again, the memory of that pulsating mass of energy would haunt them for the rest of their days. For in the heart of Cedar Hollow, something ancient and unknowable stirred, waiting patiently for its time to come.